Our seven tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We'll pass the basket. This is a weekly literature or STEP meeting. Our format is a speaker's asked to talk for no longer than 30 minutes. He or she spends 50 minutes qualifying themselves, and the other 15 are on either composition from the Big Book or a STEP that week, followed by a group, shares, discussions, or questions until 7. We then end the meeting with the Lord's Prayer or the Serenity Prayer, which is the speaker's choice. You can find our past weekly meetings on our YouTube page called Stay Alive Literature and STEP Group Meeting. You can also find information about our upcoming meetings and other great stuff in the Doylestown Recovery Group Facebook page. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share. This brings me to the speaker portion. On Monday, the 13th in Doylestown, 2025. The Monday night, 6 p.m., Stay Alive Literature and Step Group meeting at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Connor, and they are going to be sharing on their experience on the 12th step.
Thank you, guys. Like Zach said, my name is Connor, and I am an alcoholic. I have a sobriety date. My sobriety date is August 10th, 2024. I have a sponsor named Josh. He knows he's my sponsor. Josh also has a sponsor. I guess that covers kind of like the basic part of like what being an alcoholic is, but we'll get into a little bit about what happened. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces from the last time I was up here, but there's some new ones too, so can't help but feel the pressure's on a little bit because Ron's here, but we'll get into it. I was born in Langhorne. I was raised in Chalfont with both my parents, a younger brother, a younger sister. We grew up very well off. Both my parents did very well for themselves. As a young kid, I didn't act out a whole lot. I was a pretty sweet kid, pretty well behaved. Sometime around the age of like 12 or 13, I really discovered the idea of free will, and that if I wanted to do something and suffer no consequences, I would just try and go about it in a way to not get caught, not be seen, not have any lasting effects from whatever it was that I decided to do. Shortly after that, I smoked weed for the first time, and I don't fit in with a lot of people that say they didn't feel normal, they didn't fit in as a young kid. Like, I always had friends, I always fit in, I always played sports, but when I smoked weed for the first time, it was the first time in my life where I was with a group of people and everything just felt so natural. It felt regular, it felt fun, exciting, and I loved it. I loved every second of that night, and I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Shortly after that, I drank for the first time, and I fell in love with it. I was like, this is so much better. I feel so much more relaxed, so much more energetic. Everything just came natural with it. It didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong. I didn't feel anxious about it. I just loved every second of it. The second alcohol came into my life, things got bad pretty quick. I became really reckless with a lot of my decision making, and I really think those were just character defects that were dormant in me until I introduced myself to a drink, because I think that a lot of my alcoholic tendencies started well before I became a full-blown alcoholic. And right at the start of high school was when I made my first real mistake. So I had this real issue as a younger kid when I first started acting up, that I didn't know what a consequence was. I didn't feel, anytime I was punished, grounded, given detention, whatever else, that was something that I didn't grasp as a deterrent to a real behavior. Like, don't do that again, there's bad things that happen. I view consequences kind of as like a speed bump to me, just getting through that and getting back to doing whatever I want to do. And at 15, I had my first real consequence where, being someone who spoke well and presented well, I couldn't really talk my way out of it. Me and two friends made a really bad mistake, hurt someone really, really bad, and I wound up getting put into my first juvenile placement, a place called Glen Mills. It's now shut down in Ardmore, PA, but coming from an area like this, growing up in like the Doylestown, Chalfont area, and then being in a reform school in a place like that, you grow up pretty quick in a place like that. When you come from here, you learn a lot of different things. You kind of learn that you learn a lot of bad stuff at a young age, and it's not something I'd wish on anybody. I have friends who have kids now, and I really hope that none of their kids grow up and are like me. And coming out of that, the character defects came to life, like, heavily. I developed this real inconsistency with my own personality and like who I was. I had this real issue with understanding that I was smart, I was a good kid, and I just began to act out for the sake of acting out. I got a real joy out of trying to like almost lead this double life where I could sit in class, answer all the questions, get good grades, and the second school was over, be out running around, getting in fights, doing God knows what, and I just wanted to be infamous. I don't know why, but it was something that I liked a lot, and I leaned. Sorry guys, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm sorry if I like sneeze or cough, but I just wanted to be infamous. It was this weird feeling, but I loved every second of it. And, coming out of that juvenile placement, I was on house arrest for a little bit to finish the remainder of the juvenile sentence I was handed. And my behavior in school got to a point where, and I think it's really one of the moments that someone really tried to intervene in my life and tell me I was going down the wrong path outside of my immediate family. But I was in a guidance counselor's office. I'd mouthed off at a chemistry teacher. I threw a textbook at him, said some really hurtful stuff, and I sat in this office with only one foot up on the guidance counselor's desk, and it was the foot that had the ankle monitor off, almost instantly, or the ankle monitor on it, some sick way like trying to show it off. And this guidance counselor sat with me, and they were like, look, who am I talking to right now? Which Connor am I talking to? Am I talking to the kid that's got straight A's, that's scheduled to take AP tests, or am I talking to the kid with the ankle monitor on that for some reason wants to be viewed like this big bad gangster? And I just sat there and said some more, explicit things. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through, this and that. And they just didn't know how to handle me, so they gave me whatever. I think it was detention for like 4 days, and I moved on from that. I did really well in school academically. I graduated near the top of my class. I got a 2100 on my SATs. Athletically, I did well too. I played football and lacrosse in high school. I played lacrosse at a very high level, fortunately, and it offered me a lot of opportunities in my later teenage years and early 20s. But we'll get to that part in a little bit. And coming to the end of high school, when it came down to like find these colleges, I got in everywhere I applied. Everywhere I sent an application to, they got back. They're like, you can come here. But I wanted to play lacrosse. That's what I wanted to do. So when I spoke to schools like Penn State or Hobart, and they were kind of like, look, like, you're on the cusp of being that Division I athlete, maybe not quite. I was just like, forget it. I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be the big man on campus and I can cultivate this life where nobody knows me as this sweet kid, and I can show up and just be this big bad kid, this partier, this guy that's all fun all the time, and academics come easy. I wound up settling on a school called Lebanon Valley College out by Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's a small liberal arts school, really awesome school. But I went there for like one reason and one reason only. Nobody knew me and I could do whatever I wanted with no consequences. Summer before I went to college, I got my first DUI, the first of 4 DUIs I've gotten in my life. I'm currently dealing with that 4th DUI. But that summer, I got that DUI, and it was just another story for me to tell, another way for me to go around these people that don't know me and be like, yeah, I went to juvie for battery. Yeah, I got this DUI. Yeah, I've got 10 underage drinking citations, and just be this big bad person, this really cool, awesome person full of stories. And going to college, that was when everything took off for a really bad turn for me. My parents held me very accountable the best they could. I mean, obviously, me as a teenager, you couldn't tell me what to do. At 16, 17, you'd be like, stay in the house, don't do this, don't do that. And I'd tell you what you wanted to hear. In any kind of difficult conversation, I will look you dead in the eyes and tell you what you want to hear to get that conversation to be over with as fast as possible and go back to doing whatever it is that I want to do. In college, I became an everyday drinker. Other forms of alcohol also came into my life, and the legal repercussions of that continued to come. So did the spiritual ones and the psychological ones, but those were things I couldn't grasp quite at that moment, things that I really didn't grasp until sobriety this time. And the behavior just worsened and worsened and worsened. The academics slipped. I wasn't going to class anymore. I was drinking to blackout early in the morning. I don't know how anybody else feels, but like drinking to blackout at 6 o'clock in the morning is my favorite activity, and it's like the number one thing that has gotten me in trouble in most of my life. And the school really didn't want much to do with me, but middle of my sophomore year there is when I made what is probably one of the worst mistakes I've ever made. But to make a long story short, I set a house on fire, and in the process of trying to put this fire out and handle what we were doing, a neighbor called the cops, and by the time we'd put the fire out and put the couch out that I had lit on fire, I turned around, there's 2 cop cars, a fire truck, they're all freaking out, and I'm standing there being as stubborn and self-centered as I am, like, this is my house. I will set it on fire as much as I want, and you can't do anything about that. That's not true. Apparently, that's still very illegal, and they let me know that. They let me know that. I got tased twice during that incident, and I wound up getting charged with 5 counts of reckless burning with an injury because there were 5 roommates in the house. We all wound up with smoke inhalation in the hospital, this and that, and that was a much different level of charge than I'd ever faced before between the juvenile placement, the first DUI, which I did ARD for, which I know I'm jumping around a bit. I get a little jumbled up with the 30 minutes. I jump around. I'm sorry about that. But ARD is the worst possible thing to happen as an outcome for someone like me who doesn't understand the consequence, because it's really not a consequence. There's no supervision. It's probation, but I didn't have to check in. I didn't have to take drug tests. I pretty much just did whatever I want, and the rule was like, don't get arrested again and we'll throw the charge out. So now I catch these reckless burning charges, and I wind up in jail out in Lebanon County for a while, and that was a much different stop than anywhere I've been before, because they were victims of the crime, the level of the offense. They actually classified me as medium, so I wound up in a much different spot. Being that my parents were so well off, and the fact they'd done it before and still wanted what's best for me, they got me this world-class lawyer. And I wound up pretty much walking away from those charges pretty easily, and it's just, again, like another instance where I can't understand what this consequence is, and I leaned on my family to get me out of it, and nothing happened. No real deterrent for changing that behavior, and the school was like, we're done with you. Go home. You're done. We don't want you around here. They actually trespassed me from the campus, so I can't go back there until 2028. Not that I would, but that did happen. And I come home from college, and I did what I think a lot of us have done with our lives, and I went to my mom, and I was like, look, I'm going to live here. I'm going to pay rent. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to change everything. I'm going to stop drinking. I'll do all this good stuff. And like, alcoholics have the best intentions, right? My intention was, I think, in that moment to not do those things, but get better at what I was doing and not let alcohol affect my life as much as it was. And when you're an alcoholic of the hopeless variety, that's really impossible. Alcohol controlled everything. As my life got bigger outside the scope of Chalfont, college came into play, lacrosse came into play, my goals got smaller. It really did. I just focused on drinking all the time. And, my mom only put up with that for so long before she kicked me out. And at that point in time, I had a friend come to me who I'd played lacrosse with my whole life. He still plays at a very high level. His name's Matt Rambo. I don't know if anyone knows lacrosse around here, but Matt came to me and he was like, look, man, the only time I've seen you put your life together is for lacrosse. I'm going to get you this tryout with the Philadelphia Wings. I think you're capable of doing it. Why don't you come out and play with us? And I went to the tryout. I got the spot on the team. I played in 3 games in 2 years. I was not like an all-star, did not get paid a lot of money. But it didn't matter. When you have an ego as big as mine just waiting for that next thing to inflate it, it just blows it up. So now I wind up living down in like South Philly, which was even worse for me because now there's even less accountability. I can do whatever I want. I'm under the opinion I'm not going to get arrested unless I'm acting violent. And my tenure with the Philadelphia Wings ended pretty quickly because of my behavior, my inability to stay sober, and the introduction of other forms of alcohol into my life. After that, I did the same thing. I go back to my parents with the intentions of, at the very least, getting better at what I was doing, right? And told them all the same stuff. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to do all this. I'm going to go to therapy. I didn't do any of it because I didn't really want to do any of it. I just knew that I wanted alcohol to stop affecting my life. I'm trying everything but sobriety, like the cliche that we all say. I tried everything before I tried this. I was willing to try everything, hiding my drinking less, controlling the quantities I drink per hour, things like that, and it just didn't work. And around sometime in all that period of time, the physical consequences of my drinking start to come up. To this day, I still deal with issues with my eyes, issues with my heart, issues with my stomach. I just turned 28 last week, but I'm 28 years old, and I'll more than likely be on blood pressure medication for the rest of my life, and that's just something that, again, is just a consequence I can't grasp because I can't grasp spiritually and mentally what a consequence is. I don't view that as a bad thing. I'm just like, oh, it's just another thing in the way, but if I just ignore it, it'll go away. I wound up catching 2 more DUIs through all of that. I go to jail for one of them. I do a Bucks County drug court for another one, and I've missed a lot of things because of my drinking, but I've missed my siblings' graduations because of jail and because of my drinking. That's really something I can't take back, but the last couple minutes, I guess, of the qualifying part, I just want to focus on, what brought me back into the program. But I was living in Conshohocken with a friend who was also an addict. And, at this point in time, we just played off of each other. We just allowed each other to do whatever we wanted so long as we didn't die. And it got bad, like really bad, really fast. Our apartment fell apart. My life fell apart. I could not hold a job. I could not speak to my family. I couldn't stay sober long enough to make a 10-minute phone call and talk to my mom. That was impossible for me to do. While in Conshohocken last summer, I wind up getting my 4th DUI. About 7 o'clock in the morning, I was driving to work. I was told by the cop after the arrest that someone called me and said I was driving recklessly, and he stopped me, and right when he got up to the window, I was like, yeah, man, I'm drunk. And he just he hadn't said anything yet. I just rolled the window down, and he was just like, okay, pop out of the car. We do the whole dance, and I wound up, when I got the paperwork, my blood alcohol content was .332 at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is, again, in that moment at the end of my addiction, full-blown addiction, that's not something I can grasp as like a bad thing. I'm like, oh, nice, I felt that okay at that level. Like, that's the way my alcoholic mind works. I can justify anything that happens to me, any kind of consequence, physical, mental, or spiritual. After that DUI, I spent 2 weeks trying my hardest to throw my life away. I spent every penny that I had. I drank myself into oblivion. I drank myself into a point where even my roommate in full-blown addiction got concerned. And he came to me one day in my room, and he was like, look, man, we're not going to do this. You're dying. You're dying right in front of me. You can't stand up. You can't speak to me. You're urinating on yourself. You're going to the bathroom in your pants. I'm not going to let this happen here. If you die here, that's bad for us. And he wound up calling my mom, and my mom came and got me in Conshohocken, and they talk about rock bottom, but like the basement underneath rock bottom is really what it takes for a lot of us. It's what it took for me. And sitting in that car with my mom and my younger brother, and just my mom's sobbing, driving me, my brother's looking back over his shoulder at me, and I'm sitting back there on Instagram watching videos laughing. Like, I again can't grasp what this is while I'm drunk. I can't do it. All of my inhibitions, any ability to feel guilt, shame, fear, any kind of motivation to do anything goes right out the window with a drink in me. I wind up going to Malvern at Willow Grove at that point in time, and I'd been to fancy rehabs before. Like I said, my parents were well off, so I was on their insurance. I'd been in Poconos. I've been up in New York State. I've been in New Jersey. I even spent 6 months on a horse farm in Knoxville, Tennessee at one point at this recovery, sober living situation, and none of it worked for me because it was all just speed bumps, like I said, to just get back to what I wanted to do. Oh, you need me to do this? Fine, I can do this for a little bit, right until you take your eyes off me, and I'll run with it. But in Malvern, I get my first phone call, right? I'm severely withdrawing. I'm shaking. I'm sweating. I'm vomiting. I feel terrible. Probably about the worst I've ever felt physically in my life. With that first phone call, I didn't really know who to call. I didn't call my mom, my dad, and the only person I could think to call was a man, like the man who's now my sponsor, Josh, a person who I'd lived with in a recovery house 3 years prior to this. And I picked up the phone and I called him with the intention of him dropping me off cigarettes. And we didn't get that far in the conversation. He picked up the phone. I told him it was me, and he was just like, dude, I'm so happy for you. And I'm like, dude, how can he be happy that I'm fucking my life up? But I'm sorry, guys, I forgot we don't curse here. Yeah, my bad. I'm like, how can he be happy that I've messed my life up this bad, that I'm back to doing this, that I'm looking at a 5-year state prison sentence? And he was like, dude, I love you. I love that you're at Malvern. You're going to need a sponsor, so I'm going to sponsor you. And then he hung up the phone. And I was like, okay. Well, I didn't get cigarettes, but I've got a sponsor now, so I guess that works. So I go into Malvern, and I don't know what it was other than to describe it as that psychic change that we look for in this program, or that we're praying on, we're meditating on. And one of the days I woke up there, and it might have been presumptuous of me to say it, but one of the techs there I'd known from my time in Philly, and I looked at him and I was like, Cody, I think I get it. I think I get what this is about. I think I'm ready to be done. And I do think that's presumptuous to say, 2 weeks sober, I do, but for whatever reason, I said it because I felt it. And I just took everything I could out of that place. And Malvern Willow Grove isn't as fancy as some of the places I've been before, but I feel like I got the most out of that rehab that I could have gotten. And coming out of Malvern, I come back to Lansdale. I moved into SOS, the recovery program out there. I moved into the house at Laurel Lane, and I had nothing to do besides wait for that preliminary hearing on the DUI, and I just dove right into it with Josh. I was like, let's get started, let's do it. I got nothing else going for me. We dive right into the steps, right? And the first step, admitting that my life is unmanageable, that I'm powerless. And the first part of that, the way I drink, how fast I drink, the quantities I drink, drinking solely for the effect of it, that's all easy to understand. I've been doing that since I was like 16. The other part of that was the harder part to grasp. What is powerlessness? My powerlessness is that I have a decision on that first drink, but after that first drink, the next 1,000 drinks that come after it till I'm back in jail, back in a rehab, whatever it is, I have no control over. Those drinks will happen because of that first drink, but that's what powerlessness is to me. The unmanageability of my life, I can't hold a job, I can't be a member of my family, I can't be a constructive member of any relationship I have, whether it's a friend, a significant other, a family member. It took me a while to grasp that, but just sitting there and speaking with Josh, I was able to do it. Second step, coming to believe in a higher power, right? My resentment towards God started at a very young age. When I was 11 years old, I fell victim to one of the worst things that happens in the Catholic Church, and I was sexually abused by a priest. And from that point on, I just turned my back on religion. Like, how could there exist a God who wants the best for everyone and then put this kind of thing in my life? And what I believe is God is I believe that there is something out there that no matter what I have done, what I will do, what I have said, or what I will say wants the best for me no matter what. And that's what I call God today, because as much as the bad stuff I can look at in my life, I can look at it and be like, well, worse things could have happened, and I got breaks where I got the breaks, right? I've walked out of a lot of courtrooms that I shouldn't have walked out of because I was fortunate enough to be a member of the family that I'm a member of, and I didn't do any of that. You call it luck, coincidence, whatever. To me, that's God. That's God looking out for me and being like, that's not what you need. You need more time. Everything that happens for me, not to me, and that's something I can wholeheartedly believe today. Third step, turning my will and life over to God. To me, the way I look at that is that, I'm no longer the center of my own universe, right? I can go from being self-centered to understanding there's something out there more powerful than me. And the way I do that is I put faith in the fact that God's written my story start to finish and that it has an amazing ending for me. But I don't get to know what that ending is. I just get the options in front of me. Everything I do every day is a choice. I have two options, right? Make the choice that brings me back to the person that I was, or make the next right choice that moves me closer to that awesome, amazing ending that's waiting for me at the end of the story that my God has written for me. My fourth and fifth step, I don't want to say are easy, but having had known Josh for about 4 years prior to sitting down and doing that work, it made it more comfortable for me to be completely open and honest about a lot of things in my life. And it's something that is a big part of a lot of people's recovery. And for me, it was just another moment with someone I respect and love wholeheartedly and love his life trajectory and see everything he does and my ability to take part in my own recovery and just put all those things out there with him and God. And that brings us into steps 6 and 7, which are my two favorite steps in this whole program, without a doubt. Do you have the book with you again? I'm going to mention it. Drop the Rock.
Oh, yeah, Lori has it.
Okay.
I lent it to her. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Step 6 and 7, right? Character defects. There's a book out there called Drop the Rock. If you haven't heard of it, please ask me about it after the meeting. I know there's a copy in here now because they just told me, but that book will change your life. It changed my life. It made me understand that. Like, I'm a how and why guy. My dad's a mathematician. My mom's a chemist. Everything to me is science and numbers and all this stuff, right? I want to know how and why everything makes sense and everything works. And Drop the Rock to me was that. It told me what a character defect was. It showed me how they come out in real life, and I was like, this is it. This is why I am the way I am. It's not alcohol. It's me. And it's just reading that book changed my life, and I highly recommend reading that book to everybody in here if you haven't done it already. 8's based off my 4th step, right? The people I need to go and make amends to. And, amends aren't perfect, so I'll just briefly touch on some of the ones I've been able to make successfully and not. But, the most important ones to me were my brother and sister, right? Me and my sister are about 8 years apart, give or take, and she mimicked a lot of my behavior at 7 years old when I was like 15, 16. I go to jail for hurting somebody, physically, and I get out of jail and I find out she's beating people up. And most older brothers would try to tell someone to not do that, whereas I thought it was awesome. And now I'm standing in the basement with like an 8-year-old sister teaching her how to throw a right hook, and it's terrible. And then at 16 and 17, because I'm so focused on myself, I'm so self-centered and stubborn, I'm having my friends over every weekend, drinking in the basement, partying in the basement, doing God knows what. And my sister at 8 years old couldn't have friends over the house. She and my parents would have to come up with these elaborate lies to tell her friends as to why they couldn't just have people over our house. And that's a part of my sister's childhood I took away from her at a young age that I can't give back. Being able to sit down and talk to her about those things and take accountability for them, and the fact that it was me, like it wasn't alcohol, it was my own self-centeredness that did those things, it was huge for me. And I love my sister to death. She lives in Oakland. She goes to Cal Berkeley. She's graduating this May 15th, and I'm proud to say, this will be the first of my siblings' graduations I'll actually be present for, and I'm very excited for that. But I love her to death. She's a rock star. My brother, he was forced to be the oldest of the family because I wasn't around to do that, and I took a lot away from him too. He couldn't hang out in the basement. He couldn't have his friends over either, and like, love between brothers is always weird, right? It's always unique to the situation. And when I went to make amends with him, I sat behind him while he was playing video games, and I was like, hey, man, I got to talk to you. And he just cut me off right away and was like, we're not going to do that. Like, I get it. I get that you're a piece of crap, but I love what you're doing. I love that you're sober, and I love your new way of life. And, we left it at that, and now me, my brother, and sister talk every day. 10, 11, and 12, right? 10 is my daily inventory. I do that every day with my sponsor on the phone. 11 with meditating and praying. I pray every day now. I ask my God for things I want out of my day. Just a healthy day at work, another day of sobriety, another day of helping another alcoholic. And one of the things I do to meditate is something I got from therapy called, I have a real issue with self-witnessing, being able to look at myself in the mirror and love myself for who I am and the things I've done. So I spend 4 or 5 seconds every day before I brush my teeth right when I wake up just making eye contact with myself in the mirror before I get started. It's just something I practice to be able to be okay with myself. And then step 12, what we're all here to talk about today, right? Carrying this message to the next alcoholic. I love doing things like this, taking commitments. I've spoken today and last Monday. I'm speaking the next 2 Mondays as well. I take as many commitments as possible. Like whenever AA asks for help or asks for someone to do something, I'm always right there to do it. I sponsor other men in this program. I love doing it. Just it's tough sometimes, like seeing my old self in them and trying to steer them away from that. It's a real balancing act for me of trying not to. I can't make decisions for them, right? All I can do is show them the way that I live and offer suggestions and hope that they take it. But it's something I love to do, and helping people's always been something I think maybe I've wanted to do, but I was incapable of doing because of my addiction. And I think the biggest part of what I do in terms of carrying this message every day is I recently obtained a CPS certification. I became a certified peer specialist. I suffered from mental health consequences in my addiction too, attempts on my own life, psych wards, things like that. But now, working with the Penn Foundation, I have the opportunity to sit and talk to people when they're coming out of relapses, bad accidents, serious mental health crises, and I get to sit and be with people who need a friend, someone with that real life experience that's been there, and just let them know that they have options, that they never have to feel the way they're feeling ever again, and that there's a different way of life. And that life, for me involves AA, and for a lot of those people it does too. And it's something I'm extremely passionate about, and I can't wait to take that on, hopefully as a full-time career. But it's just, there's something to me that's so beautiful about that last moment, that gift of desperation, where I can look and be like, and look at these people and be like, they're right at that decision moment. You can either make that decision to keep doing this if that's what you need to do, if that's what needs to happen for you to get to where I'm at, or we could flip the coin and look at it as this is the moment where we sit down and we talk about life on a very real level, and we figure out what the next best step is for you to live a life beyond your wildest dreams, right? And I always tell people, the guys I sponsor, that life beyond your wildest dreams, it might not be that Ferrari or that big house or anything like that, but for someone like me, it's holding a job, having people like Zach in my life who I can call at any moment and they'll pick up the phone because they know I'm not asking for money or trying to get them to go party with me. They're just willing to just have that conversation, right? That's something I've never been able to do, and the coolest part of 12 Step for me is building friendships within the room, right? I didn't start coming around to you guys like Thursday and Saturday night meetings until I got close with Zach, and now I feel like a part of the group, and I'm able to pass that forward, to make other people feel involved, to reach out to the newcomers. When anybody asks me to sponsor them, I say yes. I love to share my story. I love to take commitments. I love to be involved. It's what's worked for me so far, and it's what I think will keep working, and I plan on keep doing that. But step 12 is the most important part. There's so many people that stepped out to me and were like, hey man, there's another way of life. And I wasn't willing to take that opportunity. I wanted to keep finding out what was out there for me. And I think the biggest amends that I maybe have to make even to AA is to continue to do this, to make up for the times that I wasn't willing to come into this program and start a new way of life. And it's something I try to do on a daily basis. I will talk to anybody for hours at a time about what this life is all about now. And if I could keep you guys here for 3 hours, I'd keep going. But I can't do that. All I can do is just share a little bit about everything that's happened to me and the way I work the steps. And I know I didn't do 15 minutes on step 12, but I think I've talked enough for tonight. So thank you guys for letting me share.
Thank you, Connor. We come to the part of the meeting where we open the floor for your shares, discussions, questions. Limit your time to 3 minutes. Try and keep your conversation to the literature or the step shared by tonight's speaker. If you feel like drinking or have had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. All right, you guys.